Color guard, attention. Will the audience please rise? Color guard, please present the colors. Will you please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Will all scouts please make the scout sign? Oh, yeah, post. Please, color guard, post the colors. Will all scouts please, color guard, dismissed. Audience at ease.
Thank you, Truth 38. Before you guys go, I want to invite all of the scouts to come up to this microphone in the middle here. I want you to tell us your name, where you go to school, and what you like about scouting. And you can just line up and go one right after another. We have 2 other troops that we're going to ask to come up after that.
I'm Aiden Bonner, and I go to the Hillside Middle School, and I am with Troop 38.
My name is Nathan, and I go to Northwest Middle School. And the one thing that I like most about Scouts is that you can get so many merit badges.
I'm Andre. I go to Highland High, and I like Scouts because it just gets something other to do than just stay at home.
I'm Zach Ruby. I go to Highland High, and I like Scouts because it just gives like a lot of life experience.
I'm Joey Wadge. I go to West High, and I like Scouts because it gives me time to spend with some of my friends.
I'm Farron. I go to Emerson, and I like Scouts because I get to learn a lot about the outdoors.
Thank you, guys. And I want to thank your leaders, Robert Cummings and James Ward. I understand Troop 38 meets at Wasatch Presbyterian and is obviously from your schools from around the city. So we appreciate you coming out here tonight to lead the pledge. I also want to recognize Troop 360 from Rose Park. Give us a wave, Troop 360. Where are you at? Great. If you would send your scouts up to the microphone, we want to meet you too. And I want to recognize Troop 1524. Are they here tonight also? Give us a wave. Great. And will you guys come up in no particular order, tell us your name, your school, and what you like about scouting. Please.
I'm Will. I'm from West High, and I like the fishing.
Thanks, Will.
I'm Gideon. I'm from West High, and I like the cooking.
Hi, I'm Zachary. I go to West High, and I guess the trips are pretty rad.
Hi, I'm Micah. I go to Northwest Middle School, and I like scouting because it's friends.
Hi, my name is Ashish, and I go to Eastside High School, and I like going camping.
I'm Arun.
I live in Rose Park.
I live in Rose Park.
I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to be here.
We're glad you're here too. Thank you, Scouts. You're welcome here anytime to watch local government at work, and we appreciate you helping us with our Pledge of Allegiance. I just want to review our standards of conduct as we do at every meeting. We really appreciate you coming out here. For whatever reasons you're here, we're glad you're here tonight. This is as I tell at many meetings, this is the only room in this building that's still used for its original intended purposes of lawmaking. Every other room, it's been used for other stuff, and it's not what it was started out. This room is historic, as you can tell, so we ask that you respect the historic nature of this room that we're in, that you not lean on the picture back there, you don't stand on the chairs, which I don't think you seem like that kind of a crowd. But mostly in that we welcome everyone here for whatever opinions they bring us. And to that end, I ask that you not applaud and clap at people's comments, that you don't boo or cheer or jeer at any comments either. We want people to feel free to make whatever statements they have without any comment from the rest of us. And we do have some public hearings tonight, so with regard to that particularly. I'm going to look for a motion to approve our work session meeting minutes for Tuesday, October 2nd, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Wharton, a second by Councilmember Fowler. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we've approved the minutes. Now there's something else on here that I can't do.
Would you like to pass it over to
I'll
your
turn
vice
the-
chair?
I'll turn the chairing over to the vice chair.
All right. Well, I am happy to chair this section of the meeting where we're going to be recognizing City Council Chair for this last year, Erin Mendenhall, and reflecting for a minute on her service to Salt Lake City during this last year. So, first off, I want to mention that I want to talk about some of Erin's unique personal attributes that I think have made her such a successful leader for us this year. Erin is warm. She is shows incredible poise under pressure. She is strong, and she has an eloquence that makes her approachable, but also extremely well-spoken. And there have been many times when I've been so grateful that she's been the spokesperson for our council because she's been able to have very difficult conversations in a way that is productive, and that is, I think, a rare skill. So I think that those are some of the things that have contributed to her being such a bridge builder in this past year. For example, the council's leadership that forged this last year forged new partnerships and created new opportunities for relationship building. Without each council member's involved and supportive attitudes and discussions and efforts, we would not have been able to accomplish that. But Erin was able to lead us to do those things. As a result of those partnerships, the council took major steps forward on items such as citywide street improvements. This year, the council asked voters to help pay for citywide street improvements, and the voters said yes. And so we'll be looking forward to seeing those, the benefits of that decision in the coming years. In housing, we would not relent on the pressing needs in affordable housing, persistently creating one opportunity after another, whether it was as the RDA or as the council. This year, we invested millions towards housing needs. In economic development, it was the council that opened new doors with state leaders to jointly forge a path for economic development in the Northwest Quadrant, including the inland port. Her leadership on the port issue was widely recognized and laudable. As an example, the final port legislation streams money towards affordable housing. In transportation, the council supported new tax dollars for transit improvements, such as expanded bus networks and bringing more transit to more residents. These steps are the work of many in the city, and also the work of city leaders before us who laid the groundwork for the hurdles passed in 2018. But the list of accomplishments this past year is worthy of more, our chair is worthy of more praise than just those accomplishments. Just to name a few more, there was suggested and funded a census coordinator to help ensure accurate count for city residents for the next census, which will guide public policy for our city for 10 years. Encouraging gender pay equity. Funding the Arts for All program at the Eccles Theater, which provides discounted tickets to city residents who might not otherwise be able to afford them. Adding $500,000 to parks maintenance that was previously, for the last several years, had been completely unfunded. Opening up the city to more accessory dwelling units. Funding more police officers. Beginning the process and laying the groundwork for a new East Side Police Precinct. We took more steps towards completing the homeless resource centers that are due to open next year, including next step funding and zoning standards. And then, of course, there's Aaron's work with the Utah League of Cities and Towns, which has improved Salt Lake City's relationship with our sister cities across the state. In any one year, we encounter unique opportunities, and the City Council decides how to engage, converting those opportunities, turning them into a benefit for our city. Those are the skills of a good leader. Such has been the year for Aaron Mendenhall, and we want to thank you so much for the work that you've done. Also, in thanking you, I'd like to talk about me for a minute. This is my first year on the council, and I've had the pleasure of serving as Aaron's vice chair. And the only thing that I can say about this experience that I've had is that I don't think that I could have learned any more from any one person in such a short amount of time. I've learned more about negotiation, more about speaking to my colleagues and speaking to our opponents, and how to think through issues as a council member and consider points of view that maybe I hadn't before. So I just want to thank you so much for giving me that opportunity and trusting me to be your vice chair. So thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Okay, as a token of our appreciation for your leadership, we've chosen to present you with the artwork of Brooke Smart, which features Dr. Martha Hughes Cannon. Most notably, was the first senator for Utah. So we have an original print here that was commissioned by the Better Days 2020 Foundation. Brooke took great care building details into the painting that demonstrate the determination and strength of Dr. Cannon that she carried through her life. Brooke stated she's holding a yellow rose to symbolize women's suffrage, and she has a steady gaze and a content expression on her face. I like to think that she was savoring that beautiful moment and what it symbolized for her and the women that were to follow in her footsteps. Aaron, could I ask that you step down and take a picture with this photo and all of us? Sorry, yes, Brooke, the artist Brooke Smart is here, and yeah, so thank you so much for being here for this.
Yeah, thanks for ruining that one.
I think she should have had to match the dress. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
while Councilmember Mendenhall makes her way up, point of personal privilege.
Yes, of course.
As the oldest person and the most senior member of the council, I just wanted to say that in the time that I've been on the council, Salt Lake City is always faced with unique challenges. This year, however, was remarkable in that we encountered so many from all different fronts, from the legislature to the county to, I mean, there's just been a lot to navigate. And Councilmember Mendenhall, you've done a phenomenal job as chair navigating us through this. It has not been easy. It's been very challenging, and I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciate your leadership this year and what a great job you've done. So.
Could I have a minute?
I suppose. Yes, of course.
I
Take all the time you need.
It's just a page. It's one page, I promise. That's it. I thank you, and thank you, Chris. I have to start by thanking my, I gotta breathe. My family for their love and support, because being the chair does take more time, and it takes time away from family, as Andrew said in our meeting about council compensation. It all comes from somewhere, and many of you who have served in council leadership know that firsthand. So I thank my family for supporting me and their patience, and I look forward to being with you more after this month. And to my council family, this year we moved mountains. We really did. And this we of our 7-member body is actually many incredibly dedicated, talented, and even brilliant staff members under the guidance of our venerated Cindy Gus Jensen. This year, you all sacrificed health, family time, a little bit of sanity maybe, as we moved the mountains. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the time and effort and professionalism that you gave. And I can only say that I hope that this doesn't happen again. So when I say we, I mean all of us, the whole north end of the 3rd floor. And this year we have experienced incredible progress and astounding difficulties, and we achieved better outcomes than I could have ever hoped for in January. We collaborated, we argued, we listened, we negotiated, and we arrived at better outcomes. And in the process, we made really bold and courageous decisions, some of those that have been festering for years, even decades. And when we moved the mountains, we did it together. At the beginning of the year, we dedicated our collective momentum to 3 main priorities: curb-to-curb street maintenance, the Northwest Quadrant, which we knew was coming at us, and the Transit Master Plan implementation. And I am so proud of all of you that we accomplished more on those fronts than ever before, in addition to major outcomes for affordable housing, neighborhood safety, and air quality. We made better outcomes regarding the decade-long policy issues of expanding accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. We are about to vote on council member compensation and address a long-standing economic diversity gap on this council. And we addressed bid requirements for public works projects. We expanded again our tools to create more affordable housing and supported an overstretched police force. And we're addressing our residents' transit needs. We're about to do that like never before. But the harsh reality of making these great strides meant that we had to raise revenue in order to do it. And this body took that task head on. We invested time and finances to listening to our community through open houses, community council meeting and presentations, business roundtables, public hearings, even grocery store aisle conversations that I know all of us had. We opened ourselves to the feedback of our residents, and we listened. And their feedback led to our action in May when we voted to raise our sales tax to support streets, neighborhood safety, affordable housing, and our air quality through transit expansion. And then in July, we passed a resolution supporting the county's implementation of the 4th quarter. And in August, we voted to place the general obligation bond, as Chris mentioned, on the ballot, which passed with flying colors in November. All of this to bring more revenue toward our desperate street needs and transportation needs. And not without difficulty. We passed all of these unanimously. We stayed unanimous when the stakes against our city were high, as an unseen inland port bill passed in the last days of the session. Our city was dealt an awful and unprecedented blow. I think that was the last time I teared up at a council meeting. Negotiations between our executive branch and the state leadership dissolved, leaving the state set to take action with the terrible bill that was then law. This body unanimously mobilized to restart negotiations with the state on our own. The capital city's legislative body stepped up, and we negotiated with the state's legislative bodies and the governor, and we came out with a better outcome than we had before.
Heck yeah.
Better outcomes. So this year, as your chair, I have come to know and understand each of you better, my colleagues in the office as well, better than I ever did before. And I know that every day you walk into this city for the same reason I walk into this city hall, which is to create better outcomes for all of our fellow neighbors in this city. I am so proud of you, and I'm grateful for your service. It's really been my honor to serve as your Madam Chair, which is the coolest title I'll ever have. And the real gift to me is the better outcome that I have gained as a human being for having served alongside you this year. So I thank you. On to public hearings.
Excuse me, I'm still chairing.
I have the gavel.
Oh,
now.
that's right. All right. Back to you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody. So we're into section B of our agenda. We have a resolution, a public hearing for a resolution for funding our future interlocal agreement with the UTA, Utah Transit Authority. Do I have any people? I do. I've got George Chapman up first, followed by Everett. Hi, George. You know the drill.
No, I don't.
I failed to say 2 minutes. George knows all these rules.
Oh,
Everyone
come
has
on.
2 minutes.
Can't I have
And
three?
the second person I call, be ready to come up after. Thank you.
Okay. We've talked about this before, and it's really more important because all of a sudden, Salt Lake County, under pressure from a lot of us, has finally decided to not spend the SB 136 funds on debt reduction. They're going to spend money for us. But why aren't you using those funds? Why aren't you asking for those funds to be spent on Redwood Road and State Street? Those are the roads, those are the transit corridors that need service improvements more than any other. They're twice as much as any of the other streets you're talking about, transit improvements. Second South gets around 2,000, 3,700 on Redwood Road. This is ridiculous. They're standing room only. Now's a good time. And keep in mind that going outside of Salt Lake City, you should be encouraging transit expansion south of Salt Lake City, outside of Salt Lake City, because we're in the same airshed. This is ridiculous. You should be using the grant funds. You should be asking immediately to use those grant funds for extending service, increasing frequency on Redwood Road and State Street. And if you don't do that, I am sure Title VI is not going to be taken care of. I think you're not being fair to the west side. Really, you're really screwing the west side if you put in place right now what you're planning. You should work with the county and UTA to expand service where it really needs to be done. You don't have to wait anymore for debt reduction to be taken care of. Salt Lake County wised up Talk to them. Now's a good time to talk to them about it. You should be getting a whole lot more for your money and taxes, our taxes. Please don't approve this interlocal without going through the county and UTA and getting more money for better bus service.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Everett is up next, and Everett is the last card I have on this subject. So if you want to speak to this, raise your hand and we'll get you a card.
Hi, I am Everett. Some of you may know me. A lot of you probably don't. Probably a majority you don't. Anyways, I just want to say I'm flattered to be here. I am pretty happy that my mom is in the government. I think before I really knew what government was, I think I know a lot more than other people. Like some kids in my class literally don't even know what city council is. So I think she's really helped me with my problems and that, and I just want to say, like, the little I know about government and politics, I know basically nothing. I think she has done really, really well just listening to this in general. I think anybody that has the perspective of me, being her child, would think she did a good job on this. And I think you have done a really good job on the trail.
Thank you, son. Future politician, Everett. I have one more card from Robert Goodman. Robert, come on up.
Thank you to the council. Let's see. As the council has stated before, I know that the primary objective of many of the master transit plans and other kind of transit initiatives that your objective is to connect the west side to the east side, and I support that. I congratulate you guys on making strides towards that. We have an excellent bus system here. I'm in support of priority bus lanes, as well as I believe a couple council meetings ago, someone mentioned sensors that traffic lights can pick up on where the buses are, so they prioritize buses and therefore create faster routes. I think that would be an excellent addition to our bus lines. Lastly, with our air quality and inversion, or poor air quality over the summer and in winters, I think it is kind of the city's responsibility, as well as the counties, to implement free fare days when needed. I think that you guys have done that once before, and I think it's really great when you guys can do that when you can. Thank you to the council.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. That was the last card I have on this item. Anyone else want to speak to this? Raise your hand. Come on up. Please fill out a card after and state your name.
Yeah, thanks for the time. I'm Levi Thatcher. As we consider the appropriate use of these funds, and how exciting is it, right? I would like to just make sure we don't forget about increases in speed. So if you're able to increase a bus's speed, perhaps through having the spacing between bus stops a little bit increased, or having signal priority for the buses, you're able to run at a same frequency for less dollars, or for the same amount of dollars at a higher frequency if you up the speed of these buses. And yeah, we're excited for it. And also we appreciate the consideration of dedicated bus lanes, as was mentioned, particularly along these dense corridors like 2nd South and 21st South that have 2 lanes in both directions and don't really have a great pedestrian experience because of that. Having dedicated bus lane through there would be really a boon to those areas, and akin to sort of the S line and the development that happened there due to its development. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Thatcher. Come on up, state your name.
I'm James Ord. I live in Rose Park. I'm in James's district. One of the things that's really concerning to me about the plan is, as I've watched this move forward and I paid attention to it, is that on the west side, some of these corridors, like for instance, the Second South corridor, the proposal is to have it stop at effectively the gateway at 6 West. Whereas moving that all the way to the 9th West corridor where it serves that entire community it's only 3 extra blocks, but it crosses the train tracks. There are barriers there, it goes under the freeway. And so that it changes the connection and the connectivity for the folks that live in that area. And by and large, trying to get east-west in the city that is our difficult problem if you live on the west side. I'm very lucky in that I work from home, so I don't have to make that commute anymore, but I did once upon a time, and it was not great. So having those, being able to create some accessibility places where we can have that mass transit that moves east-west, and not just have it stop at the densest part, but to have it go even further to those areas that are already underserved, particularly in Glendale, Rose Park. The west side of Rose Park is particularly underserved by that. So once you get past Redwood, you're out in the boonies. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council continue the public hearing to a later date.
I have a motion by Councilmember Fowler, a second by Councilmember Luke. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we'll continue that public hearing to a later date, probably in January. Now we'll move on to a public hearing on an ordinance around the compensation plan amendments. And I have George Chapman and Robert Goodman. George, come on up. Robert, up next. And if anyone else wishes to speak to this, raise your hand at any point, and Cindy Lou will bring you a card.
Okay, you know I like you, right?
Really?
I respect your public service, and you do spend a lot of time on stuff that's important to me and a lot of other people. Thank you. But I do not agree with increasing your salary right now. I want somebody on the council that when they run for council, they don't think they're going to get paid, like Amy. I want somebody on the council who doesn't want a pay increase until the streets are in better shape, like Charlie. I want somebody on the council who doesn't want to be a professional politician, like James. I don't think you should be increasing your salary right now. At the worst, you should consider increasing it maybe 2 or 3 years in the future, because it's wrong to increase your salary. It is. It's unethical. It's an insult to the taxpayers. And remember, you've done 3 tax increases this year. You're in the process of doubling water and sewer fees. You're not providing adequate compensation for police officers. You know, we've lost 25% of our officers in the last 3 years. 25%. They're the ones who deserve the pay increase. So I'm asking you not to increase your salary until we start spending more money on cops, until we stop spending money on alleyways, until we actually get somewhere where our streets are being adequately taken care of and maintained. We need that more. And I know thank you, I know you. I know the work you do. But you also have a lot of meetings that we don't know about, and I'd really appreciate it if that they're not secret. It's disrespectful, but I know the time you spend on this. Thank you. But those meetings should be public.
Thank you,
Please don't
George.
increase the salary now.
Thank you, George. Robert Goodman up next. Again, raise your hand if you want to speak on this issue.
Thank you to the council. Well, I'd like to speak in support of this ordinance as well. I know that the average age of Utahns here is about 29 years of age. And I know that I have a lot of empirical data. 29-year-olds don't really make all that much money. So I think incentivizing kind of diversity of both age, demographic, and walks of life on the city council, as well as kind of encouraging people who rent, potentially being on the city council. I can't say that I know if anyone rents or owns here. But yeah, I think it's a just move, and I'm a homeowner. I pay taxes, and I can say that. So, thank you, City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Anyone else wish to speak to this item? Okay. Then I'll look for a motion on the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and enact Salt Lake City Code Section 2.06.070, annual salary, setting the annual salary for each member of the City Council at 25% of the mayor's annual salary as of January 2019.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Johnston to close the public hearing, adopt tonight. Second by Councilmember Wharton. Any discussion on this motion? Councilmember Wharton.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think that having served only a year on the council, I came in, I also entered the race not knowing that there was any compensation, and found that out during the course of the campaign. But I came in not anticipating that this issue would come up. And as a first-year council member, I struggled with it because, you know, this is I have a limited perspective in terms of time on the council. What I have seen, though, is that the demands of the council when I was running and what people were saying that I should expect were not, it couldn't be more overstated. It is incredible amount of time, and it's a credible amount of personal sacrifice, not only for us as individuals, but for our families. When I look at my colleagues, all of whom it's an honor to serve with, but I see salaried employees, I see business owners, lawyers, I see people who are able to make the sacrifice with their families because they have the privilege of being in that situation, and they have the privilege of making that choice to make that sacrifice. This is the youngest city council that we've ever had in our city. And yet, I think me being the youngest member, I'm still 35. I think that there are still so many voices in our city that we aren't hearing from. We're not seeing teachers on this board. We're not seeing professors. We're not seeing hourly employees, people who work just average retail jobs or sales jobs. We all have a privilege that allows us to be here to serve. And I think to say that this should be about public service, that's right, it should be. We're doing a service to the community. But we also have to remember that we've come with a certain amount of privilege, and the price that we pay for that is a lack of diversity among the people who are able to serve on this body. And I think as the government that is the closest to the people, the government that is working alongside of our residents every day, experiencing the same problems that they're experiencing, I want to have more opportunity for more diversity among the people who can serve on this body and hopefully can go on to serve in other roles in government. And so even though this was not expected to come up this year, and it's certainly not something that I think any of us would ever feel comfortable raising under any other circumstances, but I think that this is the right thing to do, not for those of us that are here, but to move forward to having a more diverse representation from the residents of our city.
Thank you, Councilmember Wharton. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, may I take a
Please.
quick moment? I would like to point out that while this, and thank you for all of those words, Councilmember Wharton, I agree with that. I would like to point out that while this does increase the compensation of a council member, it isn't a raise from what it was intended to be over 30 years ago when the intent to compensate council and mayor was established, which was a 1-to-4, 25% ratio. This issue is more mathematical than in some parts, because nobody's looked at that ratio has been off quite a bit over the last 30 years. So to say it's an increase, yes, it is. It's also just putting this back to what I believe the intent was back when our council and the form of government was formed and this compensation was put out there, which was the 1-to-4 ratio.
Thank you, Councilmember Fowler. Anybody else?
Actually have a friendly amendment to the motion. And that would be that we enact this Salt Lake City code after the election, next year's election.
So, okay, not at the District 4 appointment time.
Correct.
But
2019,
November.
yep.
Is that a friendly amendment to you, Councilmember Johnston, who made the motion?
Yeah, I'd be okay with that.
And the second? Who was the second? Chris?
That's me.
Chris?
My only question would be that I think that, do I need to say yes or no?
No, you can absolutely respond.
So my concern with doing that is that part of the reason that this has come up now is that we have a vacancy, or soon to have a vacancy on the council. And part of the reason that's prompted this conversation now is that we want to be able to recruit now some of the best members of District 4 who can serve on this council. I think that I would like to be able to give them that extra incentive to open this up to more candidates going forward. The other thing is, because the council, unlike, I've heard a lot of people mention the 27th Amendment in our discussion, that Congress can't vote for a pay raise that goes into effect for themselves until the new Congress is elected. We don't have the ability to do that because we have staggered elections, and we don't want to create a situation where half the council is getting paid one wage and the other half is getting paid another. So I think that postponing it to 2019, November of 2019, doesn't accomplish what other things like the 27th Amendment were intended to accomplish. So I don't know what benefit that gives us by delaying it a year.
Can I just clarify, Chris? It sounds like you are a no on the friendly amendment exception.
Well, I'd like
for
to.
your second.
I'd like to hear why we think what impact that. What's the purpose of the amendment?
The purpose of the amendment is for a new council member to actually not be appointed, but that they seek election, that they go through that election cycle. And I think that you get that fresh perspective by doing that, not through an appointment process, but through the actual process of going through the election cycle. You get the same, if we're looking at appointments, it might not be the same people that are going to go through the election cycle, and that might be a good thing. But if you're going through an election cycle and somebody knows that you're going to have that increase, you're going to get the draw that you're looking at from that pool that we're discussing. So for me, I knew going into it that I was not seeking a raise, that the compensation is nothing compared to the time that is put in. I want to make that perfectly clear. I spend more time doing city council stuff than I do at my own day job. So I'm extremely grateful and fortunate to have two partners that are accommodating to make it so that I can serve. But moving forward, individuals in District 1, they're not as fortunate to have the employment that I do, and we really need to be able to pool those resources together so that we can get the quality individuals that we need to be able to be elected. So that's why I'm looking at it as an election cycle basis, not through an appointment process.
Okay, and I think I need some help on the Roberts rules. If we have a friendly amendment that's accepted by the motion maker, but it's not accepted by the second, do we seek a second, or does the friendly amendment die?
What typically, there's often confusion about this because it's thought that the motion maker and seconder needs to
Both approve.
accept. What the actuality is that the whole body has to accept it, because once that motion is made, it's the property of the body. So the whole body would need to accept that as an amendment.
Okay. And is it inappropriate for one to make a friendly amendment to the friendly amendment before there's a vote? Because I think we've done that before. An alternative friendly amendment. That we vote on the first motion before we vote on the second motion. No, we couldn't do that. Never mind.
Okay, so maybe what you could do is a quick vote on whether the body accepts that as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
I'm going to complicate this, and it's my oversight. Councilmember Johnston's original motion was to adopt an ordinance enacting 2.06070. My oversight is that you also, well, let's do it separately, actually. Let's keep it where you are, but you'll have a second ordinance to adopt potentially, which is amending the compensation plan. You don't have a motion before you for that. I can help you with that depending on where this goes. So let's handle the two ordinances separately as you're currently doing. You're about to vote on whether or not to accept the friendly amendment to delay implementation.
Okay.
Is,
Councilmember
just to clarify, the
Johnston.
section 2.06, the section we're citing right now, is that specific to a time, or does that have no time attached to it currently?
That ordinance that the motion, the currently pending motion is about, is drafted to be effective as of January 13th, 2019.
So can we actually have a friendly amendment to that?
To 2.060.
That's absolutely,
70.
yes. And that is
could.
in the language of the ordinance because
Okay.
it sets the base at a time certain, which is the beginning of that first pay period in January.
Okay.
So the
you
question
can
is-
the question is for the body as to whether it's a friendly amendment, and yes, you can absolutely change that by amendment.
Okay.
Great. Councilmember Luke? Did you want to say
Thank you,
something
Madam
before
Chair.
we vote on the
Yes, I do.
friendly?
I'm speaking in opposition to the friendly amendment. This issue this is not the first time this has come up. I've heard this many, many times, the need for council compensation and the parity issue and what the problems associated with it. I've spoken out against a pay increase in the past. I've argued against a pay increase. George Chapman is absolutely right. I've said that we should not be increasing council compensation while we have other issues that are far more critical. As difficult as it has been for me to come to the point where I'm accepting bringing things into parity with what the original intent of the ordinance was, albeit 30 years ago, or more, 37 years ago. A big part of the problem and the reason that we have that lack of parity and that we're now in the position that we are in is because of political people like myself who have argued against it in the past because it is an unpopular thing to do, and we don't want to be on record as supporting a compensation increase for ourselves. This is not lost on me at all. But because of that, we are in the hole that we are in. There is a real issue. We have increased the mayor's compensation, multiple times since then, using the same arguments that it's important that we have quality executive or people to fill the executive spot. I am hearing what my colleagues are saying, and my feeling is that if we are delaying this only politicizes it even more. It doesn't, putting something may sound good, having it at the end of an election cycle, but it doesn't accomplish anything. If we are going to do this, we ought to vote it straight up or straight down. and take whatever lumps we're going to take, and we all will. I mean, I've heard more on this issue than you know, most other issues. It is not a popular issue. I get that. For me, it is not. I'm not doing this because I want a pay raise or I want a pay raise for my colleagues. I'm doing this so that we can at least bring it into the same alignment that we were at before, which is the 4-to-1. Now, we can have another argument another day about why, you know, our representation is only worth a quarter of what the mayor's is, but that, I'm not going to get into that tonight. The ordinance was written the way it was. I think that if we're going to do this, we ought to shut the barn door that has been left open for so long, and actually just move forward and make a decision. So I am speaking against the friendly amendment, and as difficult as it is, I'm speaking for the original motion.
Any other discussion before we vote on the friendly? Oh, Councilmember Rogers.
Well, just before the barn door closes, I want to open the barn door back up. And just, you know, I just reiterate that I just think it's nice to start fresh. So, and that would be the election cycle.
Well, I will say, I don't want to repeat anything that's been said, but I think that there are real costs associated with anybody's job that they do, whether you're a babysitter or a teacher or a bus driver or a mayor, that there's costs associated. And as we've said earlier tonight, the time you spend at one place comes from time you would have spent somewhere else. So there are real costs that affect our families today. And we've talked about that in work session in the past, that I do believe that we are dramatically underpaid, and that, as I've shared in the work session, as I've approached people in my district, particularly folks who live west of 7th East, who I think would be awesome District 5 representatives, I've asked them to consider running for my seat when I'm done. And I've had individuals come back to me and say, you know, I really would like to do that, but I can't take that time away from my work, and the compensation isn't enough. It would be a hit to my family. That's not democracy. This is entry-level elected office. Every single person in my district should have the opportunity to serve here without it costing their family. That's what this is about. This is about access to democracy for me. So I believe in that for your families too. And if there are no other items to discuss on the friendly, then I'm going to roll call it. Councilmember Rogers?
Oh, of course you have to start.
It's your
Where's the friendly
friendly.
amendment? Yes, of course, and I'm voting for it.
I'll say yes on the friendly.
No.
Councilmember Luke? Fowler? And I'm a no. So the friendly dies. We're back to the original motion.
Do I have to restate the original motion?
I don't believe we need to restate the
Okay.
original
So
motion.
the
It's-
original and the second are still in place then?
Yes.
Okay.
So all of those in favor of the original motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Look at that. 6 votes up, no down. Councilmember Kitchen absent, and we just adjusted our pay.
Madam Chair, before we move on to the next item, just based on what our city attorney mentioned, there's another motion that I'd like to make.
Thank you, please.
I move that the council approve an ordinance amending Appendix C of the fiscal year 2019 annual compensation plan for non-represented employees of Salt Lake City.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Fowler, second by Councilmember Johnston. Any discussion on this compensation plan motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that completes the council member compensation adjustment. I think I'm going to go home now. That was tiring. All right, we're on to items B3 through B11 that are going to be heard as one public hearing item. These are a series of grants. Cindy Lou, do you have some cards? We do. And those grants are listed out on our agenda if you have it. We have, of course, George Chapman, followed, you know what? I'm going to have Robert Goodman go first, just to mix things up. Robert Goodman, then George Chapman, if you don't mind. And if anyone else would like to speak to any of the grant items, raise your hand. Mr. Goodman.
Thank you to the council. I guess I'll primarily speak to item 3, B3, grant application for Regional Transportation Choice Fund, 9-line Trail Center intersection. Once again, I've expressed to the council, I think it would be, I think this, the 9-line in particular, and the 9 bus route, I think it'd be really fantastic if it ran up to the Hogle Zoo, as well as Redbeat Garden and the Museum of Natural History. I think those organizations, I mean, in effect, what they do is promote science, nature, and animal care. And I think that's, those are just really valuable assets to our city. Also, it would connect the Jordan River Park to the to those organizations and the university as well. I think that would be really kind of terrific. Overall, items B3 to B11, they all, I'm in support of all of them. Lastly, when it comes to bike lanes, as much as I appreciate protected bike lanes, I know that they can be a bit more costly. I think just a simple paint along the road is safe enough and good enough for me. So thank you to the council.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. George Chapman, and I'll take a moment of personal privilege to tell you that the county council voted on the majority of these grant applications tonight. We're waiting with bated breath to hear which were approved, but I know that the decision's been made on most of them.
Okay. There's so many things, I'm just going to have to read some of them. I'm against the downtown transit hub. That's $400,000 because we really need more service before we start constructing even an indoor facility. It just doesn't make sense. The Bonneville Shoreline Trail needs more restrooms. Oh my gosh, it doesn't have any. It really needs restrooms if you're going to have 400 riders a day. There's no public engagement really on this, and there should be. It shouldn't have been rushed through. I try to stay on top of this, and I missed it. I'm against the half mile from resource centers, and it also should include Palmer Court, which is a big deal right now. It's going through a lot of what the homeless resource centers will go through. It's the second biggest requirement for medical emergency services in the city. I'm also against spending money on anything else other than an overpass on the 9 line at the railroad. You're spending all this money on the 9 line, but you're still dividing east and west because there's no overpass for pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, and bicyclists. Also, I still think you should be using the grants that they're pushing now for bus service. That's what it was supposed to be for. It was supposed to be for transit service increase. And if you're not going to do that, we're just going to get our air dirtier and dirtier. So please work with the county starting tomorrow and work with UTA. The budget's up for tomorrow's vote. Work with them. Get Redwood Road and State Street service expanded right away. And not in August, please. That's ridiculous. You're giving them the money now. Why do we have to wait for August? Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman, as always. Any other public comments on the grants? Raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to look for a motion on the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearings and refer items B3 through B11 to a future meeting for action.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Fowler, second by Councilmember Johnston. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And we close that public hearing. Let me catch up in my packet. Great, we're on to potential action items, Section C. C1 is an ordinance for 1332 and 1334 East 500 South rezone. I'll look for a motion. It's item C1. Anyone want to make a motion?
Okay.
There's options. on
Yeah,
the
there are
motion.
options, and I'm going to make a motion. Move the council adopt an ordinance rezoning the parcels located at 1332 and 1334 East, 500 South to RMU 45.
There's a motion by Councilmember Rogers, a second by Councilmember Luke. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that rezone passes. 6 yeas, 1 absent. We're on to our, I believe, C2, our open space sign zoning text amendment. We did have a comment submitted in writing from former Mayor Ralph Becker. I think it's up here. I don't have any other comment cards on C1. Is there anyone who wants to speak to that? I see some people who have spoken to it in the past, and unfortunately, you can't speak to it again, but. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not doing a public hearing again. We've done 2. We're in motion. Any motions on C2? A lot of thoughtful council members here tonight. I actually need someone to make a motion.
Madam Chair, I move the council reject the ordinance.
Second.
I have a move to reject by Councilmember Johnston, a second by Councilmember Wharton. Is there any discussion to this motion? Councilmember Johnston, please.
Sure. I'm conflicted about it, frankly. I've heard the arguments and understanding about the need for the tennis club to have the opportunity to advertise sufficiently to keep its membership up, to retain that asset for the city. I'm sympathetic to that, and I'm stuck with struggling with it being in an open space. And how in the world do you change open space back to another zoning code? Which seems to me that's what needs to happen in this case. I just can't sort of look at changing the zoning text amendment for the entire city based on that need that I think is unique there, and there's got to be another option available. I'm at a loss, frankly, about what that is. I know you've looked at that, a lot of other options. That's where I'm coming from on this. So, like I said, it's a struggle for me, and I'd love to see any other opportunity to help the tennis club and figure out another solution to this dilemma.
Madam Chair.
Councilmember Fowler.
Councilmember Johnston, I appreciate you saying that because I actually feel this the exact same way. And what's interesting is so do most of the members within my district. This tennis club is in our district, and I've heard feedback from almost equally down the middle from both sides. And most of it, I don't know if you know our Sugar House Community Council, but we're very vocal, and even the most vocal of the council members said that they were conflicted and didn't know about this. And so, unfortunately, I will probably support the motion to reject it simply because I also have to look at the future and what precedent this may be setting, and I'm sympathetic to the asset that it is, and this has been a hard one for me, and I've struggled with this decision a lot, and I think this whole council kind of has, as I've talked with my co-council members. So that's it.
Any other comments? I also say that I think I agree in that the conflict lies in the desire to help a community asset. As the tennis club clearly is and has been communicated to us versus the value that our city has defended adamantly for a very long time, which is in contrast to expanding signs on the roadway, along the freeway particularly. And so I do believe that there are some creative options like murals, which we've discussed. This body has been, we've invested in murals in the Granary District this year as the RDA board to the tune of $150,000. We got about a dozen murals out of it that cover enormous sides of buildings. And we know that, I believe that there's some flexibility for businesses, for privately owned businesses to put something like a tennis player on the side of the building and it be in the form of a mural. And based on what we've paid for murals, it might even cost less than the cost of a new sign that is of the scope that they were hoping to achieve. So any other comments before we take a vote on this? I don't, I'll just do a general call. All those in favor of the motion to reject the ordinance? Aye.
Aye.
And I believe that is unanimous. Any opposed? Okay. With that, we reject the open space sign zoning text amendment. And we're on to the ordinance locating utility lines when excavating in the right-of-way.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt an ordinance regarding requirements for locating utility lines when excavating in the right-of-way.
I have a motion by Councilmember Lucas, second by Councilmember Rogers. Any discussion on this motion? Pretty straightforward. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. That takes us to item C4, ordinance at 230 West 2nd South zoning amendment, Block 67, Phase 2 in particular.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt an ordinance amending section 21A 30045 of the Salt Lake City Code to include the parcel located at 230 West 200 South in the D4 additional height overlay, except for the northern 20 feet. I further move the council adopt a legislative intent requesting the administration begin the process of amending the downtown master plan to recognize Japantown and other significant cultural and historical assets. I further move the council note that on November 27th, 2018, the Redevelopment Agency Board allocated $100,000 in downtown placemaking funds to the public right-of-way on 100 South between 200 and 300 West. And I further move the council note that earlier today, during the December 11th Redevelopment Agency RDA meeting, the board supported a resolution establishing a working group composed of Block 67 stakeholders with the goal of working collaboratively to articulate a vision for Japantown and participating in the study and implementation of streetscape improvements to enhance placemaking in the community.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Fowler, a second by Councilmember Johnston. Is there discussion to this motion?
Madam Chair, if I may have a brief point of privilege. I
Please.
just, again, I said this in our RDA meeting earlier, but as we're here in a formal meeting, I want to just thank the RDA staff and the administration and our community from our Japanese American community and the Ritchie Group for all working together in a unique process to really come together, hopefully collaboratively. And as we continue this working group, we will continue working collaboratively to really make this project and all of our city somewhere that we all belong and we all feel that we're heard. So I really want to thank our RDA staff for all of the work that they did on this. It was a unique opportunity, but one I hope to see in the future as we continue building our city.
Any other comments on this one? I want to thank Councilmember Fowler in your capacity as the RDA Vice Chair and Councilmember Kitchen as our RDA Chair for helping us identify the $100,000 to put toward that visioning process. And I had the chance to speak with Janie Iwamoto yesterday about this, and I'm ready to vote in favor of this subsequent to that conversation. Anything else? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And that passes. We're on to item C5, our ordinance for budget amendment number 2, fiscal year 2018-19. And I believe Councilmember Luke
Madam
gonna
Chair,
make a motion.
I move that the council adopt an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2018-19 budget as proposed by the administration with the changes shown on the motion sheet, except for items A18, which will be considered separately, and A13, which will be considered at a future date. Shall I read through everything else in the motion? I will read through everything else in the motion, just to be safe.
You've said what numbers they are, so
Okay.
you don't have to read it.
Okay, I'll continue. Use vacancy savings for items A1, Chronos scope change, IMS $67,500 for the IMS director. A5, Community Connection Center janitorial and utilities, $32,000, 3 current vacancies. A8, Hand Community Development Grant Administrator, $45,372, half-year expense for 3 current vacancies. And donation processing legislative intent, item D14, the council requests the administration propose a resolution outlining the city's process for handling donations and any ordinance amendments necessary to codify current practices. The council supports improving public transparency of the donations process, standardizing the current process to ensure consistency and predictability for all participants. Furthermore, the council supports extending this approach to the city's process for handling grants. This standardization mirrors the recently updated capital and debt management policies in Resolution 29 of 2017. And approve 2 council-added items. I-1, Citywide Citizen Survey Phone Survey Edition, $13,000 from fund balance. And I-2, Council Office FTEs and staffing document changes, 2 FTEs, no budget impact in fiscal year 19.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Luke, second by Councilmember Johnston. Is there any discussion to the budget amendment 2? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make the next motion, but I have a quick offline question that I have that I'd like to ask.
Let me just say that we're moving on, oh, it's in the comments section? We'll give you just a moment. We're moving on to Section D, by the way. Part of Section D, D2, is when you can come and talk to us about whatever you want for 2 minutes. Comments to the city council. Okay, just a moment. Because first, we have questions to the mayor, but I want to wait for Charlie. You want to move on to D?
No. Madam Chair, I move that the council approve $3.57 million to facilitate the development of an East Side Police Precinct and request the administration report back to the council on exploration of properties and due diligence studies results for any property considered.
I have a motion, and I just want to be clear that this is an extension of our budget amendment number 2, fiscal year 2018-19 item.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll speak to that if that's okay.
Please do.
This is for putting money aside for the potential property purchase for an East Side Police Precinct. While there have been a number of properties looked at, this does not specifically, there is no one particular property right now. The full process still needs to continue as far as where exactly that will go, but this will provide the administration with revenue necessary to enter into, potentially enter into agreements after looking through and researching the best possible site for an East Side Sugar House precinct.
Thank you. So the motion was by Councilmember Luke, and who was my second here? Councilmember Fowler. Any other discussion on that motion? I'm sorry, I failed to see that that was still on the sheet. Thanks for catching it. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, then it passes. It looked like you were pulling your mic in. No, Councilmember Johnston. Okay, so it was unanimous. Just to be clear, we're on now to section D. And the first part is questions to the mayor from the city council. We don't have the mayor with us tonight, but we do have the chief of staff and deputy chief of staff, Mr. Patrick Leary and David Litvak. Any questions for these fellows? There you go. We did enough questioning in our work session today. We'll get to D2, comments to the city council. Once again, just like the public hearing, you can have 2 minutes, and you can't combine your time with other people, but the stack of cards in front of me are people who know that. Cindy Cromer, will you please begin, followed by George Chapman.
You should have a copy of my comments in case I run out of time. For almost 20 years, I've offered toasts of departing members of the City Council. The last time was for former council members Penfold and Adams. Tonight, I want to recognize council member and state senator-elect Derek Kitchen, who is departing too soon. For starters, consider that Derek was in nursery school when we adopted the Open Space Master Plan. I have gone on tirades about land use issues, which began decades ago, and Derek would stay with me, asking questions. Or he would say, politely, I need to get more information on that. I cannot remember a time that he dismissed the importance of the information I was sharing. The quality of his work that I have appreciated the most is his work ethic, his willingness to do the homework. He could also be counted on to show up at potlucks with great contributions to the meals. He set priorities, focusing on housing, small businesses, and the inland port. Stamina. He seemed to be everywhere. The farmer's market, his restaurant, this building, community council meetings. While I'm not cutting him any slack for leaving early, he did stick with service on the RDA, which was especially important when council member Adams left, also too soon. In addition to loyalty, he can get along with a phenomenally wide range of people, working with them constructively. Derek can work with me, and he can work with people that I don't want to be in the same room with for more than a few minutes. It's extraordinary. I will miss his conscientious approach to the job, his consistency, and his civility. I would recognize Derek's contribution even if the voters were getting to select his replacement, but we are not. You will do that next month on our behalf. So I ask you to consider Derek's strengths, the ones I've identified, and the ones you've experienced. And look for someone with those skills to represent District 4 in 2019. Smart, diligent, civil, loyal. Someone who can set priorities and has stamina. You can skip the part about great contributions to potlucks. That one's not essential. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy Cromer. I only wish he were here to hear your comments. Okay. George Chapman, and George will be followed by Ryan Steele. Ryan's is the last card I have, so raise your hand if you want to speak.
The American Public Works Association has a standard. All streets are supposed to be maintained to that standard. You have an $87 million bond, and you're going to be doing a lot of street repair, hopefully, in the next couple of years. Unfortunately, the American Public Works Association standard does not cover shoulders. So if you give a contract to, and this is happening right now in Amy's area and Charlie's area, if you give a contract to a street contractor and tell them to resurface the roadway, they're going to resurface the roadway. They will not meet any regular, respectful standard on shoulders, which is where bicyclists ride. So effectively, Salt Lake City is screwing bicyclists because the contracts that they're giving refer back to the American Public Works Association. And as long as we do that, we're not going to get our shoulders repaired. And this is important for our streets. We're trying to encourage bicycling, but our standards don't say that. So there's a street, 21st East in Salt Lake City. We did the resurfacing. It wasn't done according to standards, so the contractor shaved off and smoothed out what they were supposed to, but they left the shoulders pretty much a washboard. So it discourages ridership of bicycles on it. And the contractor was ordered to repair the whole street, including shoulders, and they correctly pointed out, but the American Public Works Association standard does not require that, so go screw yourself. That's wrong. I urge you, the administration and the council, to stay on top of this because you have an $87 million bond you're going to be using on this, and we're trying to encourage bicycling. That contract needs to be changed. Make sense?
Time.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you, George. Ryan Steele, up next. Ryan's is the last card I have.
I'm the caboose. All right, good evening, council members. I'm actually a resident of Holiday, but I do work up here at the U, so I spend quite a bit of time in your wonderful city. I'm speaking tonight actually in regard to the city's funding of the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce. I know this comes a little out of left field, so the background here involves the recent referendum in the city of Holiday, which rejected the proposed development of the old Cottonwood Mall site by Ivory and Woodbury companies. Since this vote, Derek Miller, president of the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce, has publicly declared his intention for using the chamber to lobby the state legislature to roll back referendum laws. Abby Osborne, VP of Government Affairs of the chamber, has similarly begun to spread doom and gloom PR regarding zoning by a referendum, even though zoning by developer doesn't seem to be a problem. Clark Ivory, who incidentally sits on the board of directors of the chamber as well, has also openly expressed his desire to do away with referenda altogether. The punchline is that this body is laying the groundwork to make major changes to the referendum rights of citizens this coming legislative session. Now, as somebody who lived in California for 5 years, I know that the referendum mechanism isn't perfect, but in many cases, such as the Holiday situation, it's the citizens' last resort option for retaining their voice. So what does all of this have to do with Salt Lake City? Both the City of Salt Lake and Salt Lake County each currently fund the chamber to the tune of $50,000 a year. My comments here tonight are to ask you to reconsider whether it's proper for this city to spend taxpayer money to fund what amounts to a private special interest lobbying group. Now, I recognize that this characterization of the chamber sounds harsh, so instead let's use the language from the chamber itself. For a mere $10,000 sponsorship, you can, and I'm quoting here, increase your influence among elected officials and develop policies on key issues. Let's face it, they are a special interest group. So I ask you to at least have a discussion regarding public funding of this organization. Do you believe that it's proper?
Time.
I'm wrapping up. Do you believe that it's proper for an organization to lobby to rescind the rights of the very same taxpayers that fund their organization? I would think that Salt Lake City, of all places, would recognize the importance of retaining local control. So
Please wrap it up.
in your budget discussions, I ask you to consider this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Steele, and I hope you speak to your city council and Holiday as well. That was the last comment card. Anyone else want to talk to us tonight? All right, then we'll move on to new business. E1, we have a resolution ratifying the Board of Equalization for the Central Business Improvement Area 2019 designation. I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt the resolution clarifying that the City Council adopted resolution number 46 on November 27, 2017 to establish a Board of Equalization to hear and consider objections and corrections to proposed assessments within Utah Central Business Improvement Assessment Area number DACBIA 19.
I have a motion by Councilmember Wharton, a second by Councilmember Fowler. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And E1 passes. We're on to item F1, in our unfinished business section. I'll look for a motion from Councilmember Wharton, I believe.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt a resolution amending the existing loan documents to allow $1 million to be used for permanent financing from the Salt Lake City Housing Trust Fund to the Give Development Group for the Project Open Phase 2 apartments at 529 West, 400 North.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Wharton, a second by Councilmember Johnston. Is there any discussion on this motion?
only that I'm so excited to have this as probably the most significant affordable housing project in District 3. And so I'm really excited to see us take this step.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And F1 passes. F2 is another Housing Trust Fund loan resolution.
Madam Chair, I move the council adopt a resolution authorizing a loan of $1 million from the Salt Lake City Housing Trust Fund to Shelter the Homeless Magnolia for the Magnolia at 175 South, 300 East.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Johnston, a second by Councilmember Wharton. Any discussion on this motion? I'm excited about this one. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That one passes. We're on to item F3.
Madam Chair, I move the council adopt a resolution authorizing a modified loan for $635,000 from the Salt Lake City Housing Trust Fund to Centro Civico Housing Company, LLC, for the Centro Civico Senior Housing Project at 155 South, 600 West.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Johnston in 2 seconds, but we'll take the one from Councilmember Rogers. Any discussion on this particular one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And there you go. We're on to item F4.
Madam Chair. Whoa. Ladies first.
Thanks, James. Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt a resolution declaring there is a need for the Salt Lake County Housing Authority to exercise its powers within the boundaries of Salt Lake City.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Fowler, second by Councilmember Johnston. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes, and we're done.